have a very special guest. Dr. Whitney McFadden is here to join us. For my friends today, I have recently experienced the loss of my father. It's been just about 2 weeks. And when I scheduled this call with Dr. McFadden, I wasn't quite sure what we were going to be diving into. But with the recent passing of my father, I thought it would be a really great time to dive into navigating grief in midlife and beyond, because so many of us are walking into this chapter where we're losing parents, one and then another, and it's a whole new level of grief. And so I'm super excited for this conversation today. Dr. McFadden, welcome to the Gen X Network.
Thank you for having me. And I know this is such an important time, a precious time in life, and appreciate the time to share.
Of course, of course. I find that when we're grieving, one of the things that really helps is sharing our grief. Because not only does it make me feel better to share, I mean, not everything is for everyone, but sharing snippets of it. But what I find is it helps other people open up as well, right? And even like I just recently had someone reach out to me that never likes anything, never comments, but shared with me how they just crave my content on a daily basis and how much it speaks to them, right? And so that's why I keep showing up. And that's why I feel that this topic's so important because so many people in my community, the Gen Xers, are going through this. We either have aging parents or we have parents that have passed. And to lose a parent, I'd love to start there. I'd love to start with this loss of a parent and why it feels like a part of us, part of our identity has literally been ripped out from us. I'd love
Mhm.
to hear what your thoughts are about this and just losing a parent and what you've seen in your work. Why is I mean, obviously on a surface level we know why, but on a deeper level, I'd love to dive in and explore this a little further.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, in in a mechanical sense, neurobiologically, we have a representation of everyone we know in our nervous system in our bodies. We have face neurons that light up when we think of our mom and our dad. We have a part of our body that represents our kids, and that represents our close friends and family. And everyone we know takes up a part of our system. And when we have somebody pass away, what can happen is all those neurons that are representing that person in our body, they can start to kind of feel like they're on fire. That's
Mm,
one way. Or if you have a loss, right? The person is gone, but the representation of them inside us is still there. So there's this reconciliation, this integration that's needed. Similarly, if we, they call it phantom limb syndrome. If you lose an arm, right, the representation of that arm is still in your brain and your body, even though the arm is gone, right? And what can happen is you can feel pain, even though the arm is gone. So physical pain, emotional pain, these are both still relevant systems in our body that happen. They're very parallel. And when someone is dies, our body still feels that pain and the representation is still there. So at some point, our nervous system has to start to line up with the external world, but it isn't at that moment. The things that the body does to allow for that change to happen, because it's literally neurons changing, neuroplasticity happening. Different connections are having to be made, and other connections are having to be dissembled. So these neuronal changes, they happen with emotions. They happen with grief, tantrums, anger, fear. All of the intense emotions are having our body actually change. So when you see a little kid have a tantrum, it's actually a good thing because the kid is having a moment of neuroplasticity where their nervous system is lining up with reality. And the tantrum allows them to change quicker. For us, the grief process allows us to change quicker. So if we are finding that our mind is wanting to protect ourselves from the grief, wanting to numb it out, wanting not to feel it. It can be because it's really scary to feel that level of grief, and our body's trying to protect ourselves. And that's normal too. Oftentimes, when we have a lot of things to do, someone dies, and if there's procedures and there's execution and there's the will and family, and you kind of have to go into procedure mode, you might not have time to actually feel the grief. And that's okay. But when you do have time, when you have space, when it's safe to do it, allowing your nervous system to feel the emotions are so important because that's what's changing your neurons. That's what's having you integrate the loss and having your system shift into understanding and feeling this reality. So we really need it.
I knew there was a reason this call was scheduled with you. That's really profound, Dr. McFadden. And, I think one of the things that was surprising for me is the level of grief. It's like a whole new level of grief. I mean, I've had losses before. I've had adversity in my life. I've been able to manage that grief, but this grief feels like it's at a different level. Like I can almost get lost in the grief. And what you just said made me a little less afraid of it. Because I think that fear is normal. Like, oh my God, if I go there, I'm not going to be able to get out of there. And that was kind of what I was feeling is like, how deep do I really want to go in this grief? Because it feels like there will be no way out. And so I love that you are really saying like, don't be afraid of it, right? Like you need to process it, you need to go there. But I'd love to find out from you, when somebody is deep in that grief, is there such a thing as feeling it too much, or is it always good to go deep into the feeling of it?
It's a good question. Some people have a practice of breath work where if you've ever tried breath work, it can often unlock emotions and allow for you to feel emotions. And um, if your body's kind of protecting you, sometimes it can be a way to access them, the emotions that are there. I have seen some people who do breath work, activate the emotions, and are then kind of like taken out for a day or so of their life because of all these emotions. And it's not like they're taken out, even though it looks like it on the outside, right? We might think that somebody who's not able to take care of themselves, somebody who can't cook for themselves, in a moment of grief, they're not doing the things that they used to do. Maybe they're not able to work. Maybe sometimes we might be afraid of the grief because it takes us out from our normal rhythm. And it means that, oh my gosh, are we a functioning person? And what's really happening, though, is a level of change that is requiring a lot of energy. Um, and especially with a parent as a primary caregiver, the amount of your nervous system that is connected to the parent is the greatest of any. Maybe your child is similar, but no, like that connection, there's so much of your nervous system that is connected to that primary parent. Whether you had a great relationship with them or not, it's still connected. And so the amount of energy needed for changing and that shifting and integrating that death is really high. So oftentimes people will find that they're so tired or they're trying to push themselves to do everything that they were doing before, but they really need rest because the level of energy required for that change is really high. So you kind of want to think of yourself as like you just ran a marathon or an ultra marathon and you have to recover because your body needs that energy to make those changes. And the emotional requirements and the energetic requirements are really high. So that's why many cultures have things set up when people die for the family that lost them, where they bring them food, right? And they help them so that all those people have to do is just let themselves shift into that version of life. And
Yeah.
if we hold the expectations of ourselves to be the same, we're missing like our literal metabolic needs, but we're also missing what it means to be cared for and loved, and these basic human parts of us that we show up for each other. We show
Yeah.
up for each other in the world when there is loss. And I'm sure you've, had people show up in ways that maybe were surprising or you couldn't have anticipated, or,
Yeah.
and notice that we all have this innate knowing that, like, hey, if Violet lost her father, I want to give right now.
Yeah.
She needs some support because this is hard, and she's moving, she's going through it. So, um, sitting Shiva in the Jewish faith, all the neighbors bring food for the family for weeks.
Yeah.
It's
That's what we
really
did.
important. Yeah.
And it was super helpful also because our world stopped and the world around us kept going. But within the home, as we were sitting Shiva, by the way, I kept saying shitting Seva. I kept mixing it up. I'm like, it does feel like a pile of shit. But it was so comforting because we ate together, we cooked together, we cried together, we told stories together. When our whole world just completely stopped, those 7 days of mourning were so sacred. And I really felt like after the 7 days, like I'm like, okay, I mourned, I'll be able to move on. And to your point, my level of tiredness, like I'm in mid-age, right? Like, so sleep, like normally 6, 7 hours, like that's a win for me. And I find that I've been needing 9 and 10 hours. And normally when I work out a lot, like I go to the gym and I feel like I got hit by a truck. Like I don't have the capacity. And I finally just had to shift to treat like giving myself that grace that if I'm not ready to go to the gym, maybe I'm just ready to go on a walk, right? Because I know I need to move my body. I need to move energy, but the level of exhaustion, and then the other thing is the brain fog. Like I'm very sharp and I like that. I like how sharp I am. I cannot remember things. The level of fog that I'm going through is just, it's a whole new level of brain fog. What is that about? Like, why the brain fog? Is that part of the neurological shifts that are happening?
Yeah, the neuroplasticity. Your whole body, but mostly and a lot of your nervous system is changing. It's, I guess when moms have kids, when you have a child, there's a whole brain fog that can happen. Usually you chalk it up to lack of sleep. But your body is literally has like another being that is now taking up space in your brain. And there's a lot of change that's happening in the way you are thinking and processing the world. In that, it's like if you, oh, I wish I had a good metaphor, but it's like growing pains. Like you are becoming somebody different. And in that process of growth, the hormones are changing, the neuroendocrine system is changing, the neurons are getting fed, they're growing, they're recalibrating. And in that process, a lot of stuff is getting shifted. And so the same ways of thinking, the same ways of being, the same ways of operating are going to be different. And and also, with grief and pain, and you could be having a lot of emotional pain. The body will try to actually like work to help bring that down, right? The inflammation, that's in your body because of that pain. Your body's going to be working hard to bring that down. So there are a lot of different mechanisms happening in grief that are going to be a change. The, if you were in, I think of like the parasympathetic and sympathetic. The sympathetic fight, flight, freeze, modes are really just like just what you need to get and execute. That parasympathetic rest and digest mode, using the whole brain, being in that place of creativity, all of these different modes of operating, it's going to be different now because you are not in parasympathetic using your whole brain because of the grief, right? A lot of stuff is shifting. So you're not going to have those places, those same thoughts, those same modes of operating. potentially there could be moments of fight, flight, freeze, but grief is like a different thing. So you might not be as sharp in those moments where you have to be because your whole brain isn't actually able to put the energy there. Probably if you were running for your life, but like if it's not that, right, the energy is actually going elsewhere.
And will it go back to normal? Like, or is it a new normal I mean, will my brain cells come back? Will I be eventually be able to be sharp? Will I eventually get over the exhaustion? And does it look like it looks before, or will it look different because I'm forever changed?
Yeah. Well, it's hard to know the future of every individual person, but what I do know is that this is a moment in time and this is a moment of change. And with every moment of change, it usually goes into another way, later. You are going to be forever different, but you are going to get your brain functions back. You are going to eventually require less change and plasticity. You are going to have your integrated sense of his death. And, a lot of people build resilience when they develop a relationship with the person that passed away. A lot of religions have developed spirituality to create that relationship with the version of them that's in your nervous system. Um, and that's really amazing because it like the phantom limb syndrome, like if you have the pain when the hand is gone, the treatment is actually to massage. Even if the hand isn't there, massaging it actually causes those neurons to feel better. So, similarly, if you lose a loved one, to actually connect with them, to connect with them in your heart, to connect with them in your body, to know that there's that version of them is still in your body, even if they aren't there, everything you've learned from them is still inside you, everything that you've gotten from them, their wisdom, their teachings, they're still with you. And so, connecting to that, knowing it's there, acknowledging it, talking to that version inside that can be really helpful because those lights up those neurons and allows that person to still stay with us. That I think is one of the more resilient ways of coping with grief because it teaches us all the wisdom of people and helps us pass it down. So that's how I think our society evolves. When someone dies, it's not like everything that they have taught us dies with them,
Yeah.
right? We can still have, my aunt passed away years ago and I still talk to her. And I'm like, Josie, what would you say to do? And and she's so practical. She's always like, stop worrying about it,
It does
Um,
help. I find it's those, I call them like tender mercies, right? Like when there was like the first few days after his death, there were so many things that were unexplainable that happened, right? That I knew were him. And, when there was a butterfly circling around me, and it was a monarch butterfly. And
Mhm.
I had said when he was alive that when my mom dies, she's going to come back as a monarch butterfly. And, so I knew he heard me. And so I do find that those little ways to connect with him help. But other times it almost sets me back into that downward spiral because it's a reminder of that this is all that I have. And it's kind of like an unknown. I mean, I don't know 100% that that was him and the butterfly. I like the idea of it. I think it was him, but the reality is like I can't see him, feel him, argue with him, all the things that were a constant for 51 years in my life. And so I think in time it won't be because I feel like my wound is so like it's so raw right now, right? Like the wound is wide open. And so everything triggers me, everything is kind of like when I flew home yesterday. Oh, last time I got on a plane, Papa was alive. Last time I drove this car, Papa was alive. The last time I saw my babies. So everything is like the last time. And so it feels like this open wound. And, I wanted to ask you a question. I saw a reel yesterday, and I've read these statistics, but how Gen X in general have the highest depression rates, highest suicide rates. And the number one reason was childhood trauma. And you and I have talked about, I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. And I feel like for me, I've really came to peace with my father and there was nothing like left unsaid. There was like I don't have that ache, but I know that's not the case for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And so I'd love for you to share a little bit when, we have this trauma at the hands of that parent and there wasn't peace made. Is that another layer of grief? And why is it so complex?
Yeah, yeah. And so sometimes we can feel conflict because the parent is dead, which is sad, but we can also feel happy that they're not suffering anymore, and then it's even harder when maybe there was a lot of pain and now a part of you might feel relief that that pain won't be happening anymore. And then from that can come guilt around that relief. Like, am I a bad person for feeling that guilt? And there are lots of parts to us in that way. In the same way with that person, there are lots of parts to them. And what I find to be really valuable is to know that because we're all human and all of our traumas are because of things that have happened to us, and other people's traumas are because of things that happened to them. And the long lineage back of traumatic experiences, and you can trace them all back. Oftentimes, we can connect to the higher selves, our higher selves, the higher selves of those people, and see like the kind of like the clear version of them, outside of their traumas, the version of them that isn't traumatized, that wanted to show up in the ways that them that if they weren't traumatized, that would be what they would want. And a lot of time, and I kind of have this like intuitive sense of what those parents would be like if they didn't have that trauma. And that is oftentimes the version of them that is connected through our hearts and is connected in our bodies. And we can have a relationship with that version, of parents and didn't have the support. Their highest self is from their parents. So behaviors weren't there. But it can be really hard. And I will say one thing, if you relief, and then also spiral is actually not a bad. It helps us fire through it.
Whitney,
So but
I'm coming right back. I had to yell
okay.
at my kids to get off electronics. So let's continue because that last bit was really bumpy
Meaning,
for me. I don't know if
okay.
you saw it. So let's try again. Whatever you were just saying, let's start again on because it was so good.
Oh,
But the part about I know there was so much there, but maybe just start with when from the guilt, like, and you might
yeah.
have a lot of guilt. So let's start from
Yeah.
there. And then I'll cut and paste everything.
Yeah. Well, so it can feel challenging when you have a parent and you're finding relief in their passing, even though you're sad that they died. They might feel relief, so you might be relieved for them, but you might feel relief if they were causing you struggles or trauma, and that can feel really hard. And many times people can feel guilty that they feel that way. And there are lots of parts of us, that feel love and sadness, but guilt and relief. And that's all part of the human condition. And one way to really connect through that is to know, hey, this parent had their own traumas and they're operating in their traumas. And so when we can see their traumas, it becomes a little bit more separated. We can see their highest self would have wanted to give us love in a caring and nurturing way, and they weren't able to do it. And so we can see their highest selves and we can feel their love, their heart. Sometimes we can feel that and know that that's there, even though that parent experienced traumas of their own that blocked them from being able to do it. And that beauty of like the highest self, your highest self and their highest self can have a relationship. And that is beyond the conditioning, beyond the traumas, beyond the life experience that led to the inability to really care and receive and give love in those ways. So the other part is that leaning into the emotions, that guilt, that grief, that downward spiral, right? It can be scary, but it's actually our body doing its job. It's normal to feel that way. And so to really accept ourselves and say, hey, my body's doing this thing and it really is normal to do it. Let me lean into it. Let me allow myself to fully feel it. Let me walk into the abyss and trust that there's a process happening.
Hmm.
And oftentimes, what's found at that bottom of the abyss can be life changing. What's found at the bottom of that guilt can be life changing if we're willing to go there and we're willing to guide ourselves through what we know is normal for our bodies to feel. And we can come out a more integrated person.
Hmm.
And having guidance while you do that is one way. You can just go in and see where your body goes. You can have guidance if you don't feel safe and it's hard to do that, or you might be numbing. So you're scared. But if you get support and are willing to walk into that place, the body can do such incredible healing work. It can, yeah, change your life, change the way you operate for the better.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about these new perspectives that can come from grief. And in one sense, you almost make it like, there's, I mean, not in one sense, but there's blessing. There's beauty in the pain and in the grief, right? There's a new aspect of ourselves that I think is possible. And I'm sure there's layers, like I'm so new in this journey. But one of the things that I recognized when he passed, I saw him in a new light because I heard so many stories about him and, what a light he was and how helpful he was, even before my time, what a great friend he was. And, my father is a Holocaust survivor. And when the rabbi learned that, just the level of reverence, and it was like an honor to bury him. And the realization that I had that I never really had before, because I had grievances with my father. I mean, we'd gotten through them, but, I was still, I had, because I hadn't lost him, I wasn't able to see this. And one of the things I realized was that it was an honor to be his daughter. And I had never seen that before. And I saw our relationship as a contract that we both signed up for. And neither role was easy, but it was necessary for me to do the life work that I do today. And in seeing it as an honor to be his daughter, I had a keynote 3 days after I buried him, which really felt impossible. But that new perspective gave me another perspective that it was an honor to hear me speak. And for a girl who always was like, oh, I hope they like me. Oh, I want to deliver. I want to do a good job. I didn't have any of that, Dr. McFadden. Like, I just went in there like, like I had a crown on my head and that crown's not coming off. Like I know now the lineage that I come from and I stand on his shoulders. And that perspective didn't come until I lost him. And that's a little bittersweet. It's a little bittersweet that I couldn't fix my crown until I lost my father. But it was a huge blessing for me because it was my best keynote ever. And so I'm assuming that these are the things you're speaking of, that there's these gifts in grief.
Yeah, yeah. I always think of it as conservation of energy. It's like in physics that when someone dies, right, that all the energy that they are carrying when they're alive gets actually spread out to everyone who knows them,
Mm.
and that you get to receive that energy. And you're receiving that is now, hey, the crown is on. And that's beautiful. I have chills just thinking about it. Like
Oh,
the
I
past.
feel that. I feel his energy. And the way you just explained it, it makes so much sense. I do feel like we get to channel their strength, their courage, their tenacity, their perseverance. And, my father and I our relationship, there was a lot of love, but there was a lot of darkness because he was a Holocaust survivor, child Holocaust survivor, and he never was aware of his trauma and how much that experience in his most formative years affected him and who he became when he was triggered. And so there was throughout my life darkness coming from that relationship. I mean, I learned to create boundaries and we found our way and there was a lot of healing. But one of the things I realized is that now this relationship is one of just light. It's just love. Like there's no more darkness coming at me. And so to your point, it's a new relationship and it's one that is beneficial in all ways. And that does bring me peace. It brings me peace in knowing that he now is his highest self, all knowing, all loving, right? And that he and I can now connect in this new way. I'd love to know because one of the things you're so good at is providing tools and resources for support. And so, for us that are grieving the loss of a parent, what are some ways that you would recommend would be because you're saying like, hey, don't be afraid of the grief, don't be afraid of the pain. It offers wisdom, it offers blessings, it offers beauty and transformation. But I do feel that there's probably tools, resources that can help us navigate the pain in a healthier way. So we're not numbing and letting ourselves go and just in this downward spiral, which I think is easy to fall into when you lose your parents. Like it's easy to just let yourself go and not care about anything and just feel like you're fully lost. And so, would you share some of the things that you would recommend that we can use to navigate this chapter of grief?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, first, I just want to speak to that feeling of lost because that is normal too when our whole body is changing, when our relationship to this person is recalibrating. It can feel like the rug is pulled out and you're like falling through the world in a different way. So the loss is real. And if you can know that that's normal and that it's going to be different later, the loss actually can be part of the growth.
Mm.
So doing it alone can be scary. So I would say, there are grief counselors. I have an incredible colleague who does grief work with people, and she's amazing. And there are people who are really good at guiding people through grief safely, where they're not feeling like they're alone in the abyss of feeling lost. And create expectations around what's your body and mind going to do and what's normal and what's not. And I would also say recruiting, like getting help, like not just emotionally, but with the logistics of the days, because you're going to need to rest a lot. You're going to need to not be doing all the things that you were doing before. And you're going to need to just be quieter, quieter and simpler and slower as your body's changing.
Which
So
is totally new for me. Like
yeah,
none of those things are my normal vibe. Like I'm very type A. I like to move fast. I like to get things done. I find joy in productivity. And that is the biggest thing that I've noticed is how slow I'm moving, how much rest I need, how quiet I am, and how it's like it's almost like I have this I mean, it's not like a weight. It does feel like it some days, but like I have this companion and it's called grief. And wherever I go, there it comes with me. And it has this layer of just slowing everything down. And in the past, I used weightlifting and yoga as my superpower, as a way to build energy. But I'm finding in this chapter that I'm not craving it and I don't even have the energy for it. Like today, I finally got back to the gym and I had to do like just half of my normal workout, but that was more than I've been able to do in a while. And
mhm,
that things like just taking a walk sitting in the sun, like grounding in the earth. Those are the things that are calling me. But there's this voice like, oh, you got to work out, be productive, you'll feel better. And so it's really, what's the word, reaffirming that you're acknowledging here that this is not the time to get things done. This is not the time to be, my super, like to have a, try to be my most super self. That it's really a time for quiet and being still and reflecting because so much is happening. It's almost like you said, like giving birth, right? Like
Mm,
there's so many changes. Like would I expect myself after I gave birth to a baby to be 100% and, my leanest, most fittest self? No. Why
mhm.
am I expecting that of myself today?
Yeah. Your body is making a lot of changes and needing energy for it. So, resting, feeding yourself good food, treating yourself like you're that you care, and receiving the care from others. Yeah. It's a time of rest. And I don't know if any of the listeners have ever been on a palliative care unit, but if you are on the palliative care unit where people are dying, actively dying in the next 15 days, the energetics of that space is incredible. It is so present,
Mm,
so slow. All that matters is that moment. And it's very different than life. But when death is here, there's there's this really fascinating piece to it, which is peace. Alongside all the chaos and the loss and the abyss, there's peace too.
yeah.
And that, really acknowledging the level of peace that comes from death, being connected to it in that real way. Um, yeah, all you can do is really be.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it felt. I was with my father his final 2 days, and I had been sending him because he had late stage heart failure. And I knew how much he was suffering, even though he remained the strong, big, macho man. And if anyone asked, he's fine. And he never wanted the grandkids to see him on his oxygen tank that he
Mm,
was on all the time. But I started sending him light in my meditations a few months back, and I really stepped it up as I was going home um, to be, and I knew that part of what I was coming home for was to set him free. I knew that, like, I just had a knowing. I feel like I felt him leaving the months leading up to it. And so I just kept sending him light. And I was doing this one meditation. It was like the father wound, and where you sever the dark cord of connection, right? And for me, it was like in my root chakra, that
mm,
safety chakra, right? And I created a new cord from my heart to his heart. And I just kept opening the portal and bringing him up to heaven, to, his mom and his dad. And I just kept doing that energetic exchange because I knew he would need a lot of light and a lot of peace to make the transition.
mm,
And the last couple days that I was there, we had some amazing moments between us. My father wasn't one to say a lot, especially, about things, but the things that were said, like I'm just so grateful that I had that with him because in his, lack of words, in the few words he said and the few gestures that he did, it was like, all is well between us and there's nothing left but love.
mm,
And so I got to experience that. And I think it's because, to your point, all there was death. Like he was just so present, and he thanked me. He knew what I was doing. He thanked me for taking care of him. He thanked me for even things I think that he wasn't aware. I think some, like he was already transitioning already, so he'd come in and out and he thanked me for that. And it was like my father didn't do things like that very often. know? And so, yeah, I really get that. I really get that. I want to share with you a dream I had last night that helped put things a little bit in perspective. One of the things my father always said is that the living need to live, that it is our jobs to live and live life to the fullest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had a couple really hard days, and I just felt like I was getting in this place that I wasn't going to be able to come out with from. I've struggled, because I am the daughter of a child Holocaust survivor. I learned later in life where my depression and anxiety disorders came from. And so I'm susceptible, right? Like I'm more susceptible to it than like the deep grief because it's wired into me. And I've spent years on rewiring and rewiring, but I think when something like this happens, it can really set you back. And I had a dream last night and it was so real. And the dream was that my baby girl passed away. And it was such a significant loss for me that when I woke up and I realized it was just a dream, I was so freaking grateful. Like I was like, so like, okay, okay. And that perspective, like I know he's gone, but look at everything I have. Like I still have so much, like I have my babies. I have, like I have so much love. Like yes, I lost him, but he's with me. And that perspective really helped me today. I got up, I went on my walk, I, did my little weight training workout. I had my electrolytes and like this new perspective and using the practices that help build my energy and bring it back to myself have really helped me. It really helped me pull my head out of my ass, if you will, because it made me realize what I still have. Because I think it's so easy to get caught up in how much you lost, right? Like what is lost and what is lost forever. And there's so much finality in that. And so even though it was a horrific dream, I woke up like, okay, I hear you. I hear you. I'm here. I'm meant to live. I have babies. Like I still have so much love, in my world. And like I need to focus on that.
Yeah, yeah,
So sometimes a new perspective can really be helpful and grateful. I'm grateful for that perspective. But
yeah. Gratitude for what you do have
yeah,
and your life living today.
yeah, even in spite of the loss,
Yeah,
right? Even with him being gone, I still have so many blessings in my life. And I think that that was a big change in perspective, like a paradigm shift almost from, when he first died. And so that was super helpful. Are there any ways that if people are going through grief or anything, I know you offer some amazing support packages that you support people to be their best self, and I think when better to be your best self than when you're dealing with grief, not so you can impress other people, but so you can support yourself, and support yourself through the habits that you have. So, is there anything that, you offer that you feel would be great for any listener that's looking to really support themselves in this journey?
yeah, definitely. I do a lot of lifestyle and somatic therapy. So having people heal their relationships with their parents, rewire their nervous system, or really bring in that sense of that highest self and integrate their experience of death through somatic work. It's so game changing, life changing. So yeah, I offer those practices. I do them twice a week with patients and clients. And so yeah, if anyone is interested in kind of diving into that and getting support, not doing it alone, please reach out. I'm on Instagram at Whitney McFadden, MD, and I can share with you my email and phone number if people want to contact me that way too. And my website, www.willowmindhealth.com.
And I'll drop it in the show notes below as well. And I've seen your Instagram. And not only is it super informative, it's also very entertaining. And I love it because, when we're entertained, it's easier to learn, I find. And so thank you, Dr. McFadden. I knew today was going to be an amazing, transformative conversation. And what I'm walking away with today, the biggest thing for me that I got from this is not to be afraid of the grief and to
Mhm.
realize the blessing and the beauty that it can bring. And the importance also of just being okay with slowing down and that all this that I'm feeling is normal. Like everything you said, the exhaustion, the brain fog, the slowness, the stillness. This is exactly where I'm at. And I think my listeners, my viewers that know me know that usually my energy is super high. And Dr. McFadden, you and I have done another
Mhm.
interview. We've talked a few times, and that it's just not there right now. It's more grounded. It's more, I've never felt more raw, more grounded, more real. But I know there's beauty in that. And so I thank you for this deep dive. And thank you to anyone who is watching this. And if you would like to get more information, I'll put Dr. McFadden's notes in, or information rather, down below so you can reach out to her and have the support that you need during this time. Thank you all so much. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
McFadden,
you.
and I'll see you
Thank
all
you.
next time.
Bye.